Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to be making a bloomer loaf, which is a large loaf which you can cut in for sandwiches. And this is going to be a garlic, onion and cheese bloomer. So I'm going to put some garlic granules, some onion granules and some pecorino cheese in. You could use whatever cheese you want. I've done a bloomer loaf on my blog and a video with cheddar cheese, and that was very good. But I'm going to use pecorino and I'm just a little bit of that to add some flavour into the garlic and the onion. So the recipe takes quite a while because we have to make the dough, then prove it, then we knead it a little bit longer, then we prove it again, then we shape it, rest it again before we actually put it into the oven. So it takes a good few hours to do, but it's well worth it because you end up with a lovely large loaf which is perfect for sandwiches or for whatever else you might want to use it for. So I'll go on to the ingredients, and for this I have 675 grams of bread flour, which is 4.5 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. Then I have 50 grams of grated pecorino, and that works out at about 2/3 of a cup. I have 430 milliliters, 1 2/3 cups plus 2 tablespoons of lukewarm water, and that's at about 42 Celsius, about 110 Fahrenheit. I have 12 grams of garlic powder, which is 3 teaspoons, 12 grams of onion powder or granules, which is 3 teaspoons, and 9 grams, 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And then here I have 4 grams of sugar, which is about a teaspoon, and then I have 7 grams, 1 packet of active dried yeast. If you don't have active dried yeast, you could use instant yeast, but then you don't want to do the next step, because for the next step I'm going to pour about 100 milliliters of water onto the sugar, and I'll give that a little stir around, and then I'm going to add my yeast into that, and I'm going to leave that for about 10 minutes for it to activate. If you're using instant yeast, it doesn't need to be activated, it can be added straight into the dry ingredients. So I'll come back when this is activated, and I'll have my stand mixer ready to mix the dough. So as you can see, the yeast is activated quite nicely, it's become quite frothy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the dry ingredients into the bowl of my stand mixer. So that's the flour, and here goes the salt, the garlic and the onion granules. And then the grated cheese, and you can use any cheese you want basically, as hard cheese which is grateable, and I'm going to just mix those around with a whisk. I could actually do it, just set the machine working, but it's quicker to just do it like that. And then I'll make a bit of a well in the centre, and into that I'm going to pour my activated yeast and then the rest of the water, but I'll actually use that to wash the rest of the yeast out of the dish. And I'm then going to simply knead that starting on a low speed and then moving to a medium speed, and let it knead until it's smooth and elastic. So that's just about come together, so I'm going to turn the speed up to medium, and I'll knead it until it is all nice and stretchy and quite smooth. So that's kneaded now. And I've kneaded that for about 8 minutes altogether, and I did add another tablespoon of flour as I was watching it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that out of my bowl, and with the dough out I've put it onto a lightly floured surface, and I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on the top as well, and I'm just going to knead that for 1 minute. And that's actually looking quite good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to form that into a ball. And I should say you can add more flour if you think your dough is too tacky. You can add more flour, because water gets absorbed at different rates depending on the humidity in the air and the type of flour. So with that in a ball like that, I'm going to put that into a lightly greased bowl, and then I'm going to turn it over so that the top and the bottom is coated in the oil, and I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap like that, and I'm going to leave that in a warm place until it's doubled in size. It's quite warm here today, so that's probably not going to take much more than an hour. And once it's doubled in size, I'll come back and we'll knock the air out, knead it briefly again, and then we have to leave it rise again until it's doubled in size for a second time. So I've let the dough rest for an hour, and it's more than doubled in size. So this is what it looks like at the moment, and I'm going to tip that out onto a floured work surface like that, and I'm going to knock the air out of it, and I'm going to knead it for 3 or 4 minutes. And then, having kneaded it for another 3 minutes, I'm going to form it into a ball again. I'm going to like that, and I'm going to put it back into my bowl, and I'm going to cover it with the plastic wrap again, and I'm going to leave it for another hour, and it will rise up and double in size again. And at that point I'll come back and we'll knead it again and go on to do the shaping. So my dough has rested for another hour, and I'll tip it out onto the floured surface again, and as before I'm going to knock the air out, and I'm going to knead it for a further 3 to 4 minutes, just as before. And having kneaded that again for another 3 minutes, I'm simply going to leave it there for 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes I'll come back and we'll do the first shape of the dough. We'll roll it out and roll it up, and then we need to rest it for a little bit longer, but I'll tell you about that when I come back. So I rested the dough for 5 minutes, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shape it into a rectangle which is about 12 inches long and sort of 6 to 8 inches wide. And that's good like that. So then I'm simply going to take one end of it like that and fold it down, and then take the other end and fold that over as well. Like that. And I'm going to shorten that to about 12 inches again. Like that. That's good enough. And then I'm going to cover it with a clean tea towel, and I'm going to leave it there for 15 minutes. And as that 15 minutes comes to an end, I'm going to preheat my oven to 220 Celsius, about 190 Celsius with a fan, 430 Fahrenheit. And I'm going to put a tray of water into the bottom of the oven. And then when I come back, we will finish shaping this, put it on a baking tray, give it one final rest for 10 minutes before it goes into the oven. So my dough has rested and my oven is preheating, so I'm going to pick that up and put it onto a parchment lined baking tray like that, and just gently reshape it. And then I'm going to take a sharp knife or a blade, and I'm going to cut about 5 or 6 diagonal lines on it. Like that. And I'm going to cover it again for 10 minutes just while my oven preheats. At that point we'll brush it with a little drop of water that I've put half a teaspoon of salt into, and that will help with the browning and forming the crust. So with the oven preheated fully now, and this has rested for 10 minutes, I'm going to brush it all over with a little of the salted water. And I'm going to put it into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for between 25 and 30 minutes until it rises up and it turns a nice golden brown colour. And if I tap the underside of it with my knuckles, it will sound hollow. That will mean that it's cooked right through. Then I'll take it out of the oven and put it onto a wire rack to cool completely. And once it's cooled completely, I'll come back and show you the results. I baked my garlic, onion and cheese bread, bloomer, for 30 minutes, and it coloured nicely on the outside. So I took it out of the oven and I've allowed it to cool down, and I've actually cut it to show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like with a slice taken out. It's baked up very well indeed. It's nice and soft. So I'll actually just cut that in half. And I'll have a taste of this piece. Has a lovely texture, and I get the flavour of the garlic and the onion, and the slight umami flavour of the cheese as well. It's very, very good. This is going to be perfect for sandwiches for my lunch. So it's actually easy to make, although it does take a little bit of time. And I should say that although I use my stand mixer, you can do everything by hand, and I will put a link below this video to my cheese bloomer, and where I did everything without the stand mixer, so you can see how easy it is to do it by hand as well. So that's going to be it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.